3, 2, and we should be good to go. Awesome. Grab chat, make sure I can see you guys and you can see me. Welcome, welcome. Awesome. Let me know if you can hear and see me, if audio levels are good, and if I'm in focus. I tried to set this up pretty quick, so I was doing something else. And so hopefully you can hear me, hopefully you can see me, and we'll get started here in just a second. What's going on, Grayson Osiris, multi-human? Welcome, welcome. Gonna set up a few models here on screen while we wait. Let me see. So during my last live stream, I had shown off these models that I'm pulling up right now. They're not finished, but where'd the big guy go? There he is. These aren't finished yet, but they are going to be finished soon and available for download over on my Gumroad. I will let you guys know when they are ready first thing. I'm hoping I'll be able to finish them all in the next week or two. They're mostly finished, as you can see, but there's like some little cleanup stuff I want to do to them. So I'll be playing with those. So we got a toon or cartoon stylized male and female, more average male and female, and then a more muscular or athletic male and female. So a lot of variety there. You can hear and see. Beautiful. Perfect. Love to hear it. What's going on, Toby? Welcome. All right. So today, it's going to be all about anatomy, because who doesn't love anatomy? I mean, a lot of people probably don't like anatomy. But we're going to be talking about studying anatomy, sculpting anatomy, drawing anatomy, living anatomy. We're going to be talking about anatomy. And the place where we are going to start is probably with a little bit of study advice, and then we're going to get into a demo or 2 or 3. I got some stuff planned. We're going to be sculpting some skulls, skull, singular, one skull, and probably do a hand and maybe one other thing that I got planned in terms of just kind of creating how I go about creating clean shapes in the process for that kind of my general sculpting process for if we're looking at the macro scale of things. So we'll be getting into that here in just a second. I'll give another minute or two for people to pop in, and then we'll get started. And of course, along the way, if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, you can keep to yourself, but feel free to post any comments in the chat or questions in the chat. And let me make sure I have my actual references here. I found a few quick images. Some of them are better than others. And I'll try to set up a few of these real fast. And of course, you guys cannot see what I have here on screen, so sorry about that. Here are the 3D models of which I was talking. Apologies, didn't have my actual screen on view there. So the 2 stylized or cartoony versions over here, the more average that I was talking about here in the middle, male and female, and then the more athletic type on the right. So these are what is going to be available. A lot of people were asking about these from my last live stream. So those are going to be available soon, and if you are interested in those, just make sure you're following me and you'll see a link here soon. All right, and then let's grab a couple reference images. This one's probably a little more than what I need. I really just want like one JPEG. A front and side view is probably fine. Let's do that. Let's do this one here. This will delete. And then, let's see, where do we want this guy? I'll put that up here. And I'll trim out my camera here in a sec to make that a little easier for us to see. But first, we gotta talk about some studying, some anatomy studying. Because I've been getting a lot of questions throughout my whole career about anatomy. But most recently, during last week's live stream and a few of the videos that I've been releasing, I've been getting a lot of questions about anatomy, especially when some of you probably saw the short video that I did about how I like to go about studying anatomy. So I'd like to elaborate on that a little more, because I think the majority of videos that I see, specifically on YouTube, I feel like it's such clickbait, and I don't know. I feel like a lot of them are really terrible, or a lot of them are just like the same thing over and over again without being like genuine, actual, like helpful advice. I don't know. That's just kind of my opinion. But I think that there are like literally 4 things that you need to do to like learn and study anatomy. And I think they're really, really simple. The first one is you need to learn proportions. This is like really basic stuff. It's like the bones of the body, the skeleton, which is what we're going to be getting into here in a moment when we start sculpting this skull. So for the bones of a human body, they're pretty much the same for every single person. Obviously, there's a lot of variety in people in terms of height, in terms of weight. But for the most part, the skeleton doesn't really change. No matter how muscular you are, no matter how skinny you are, how fat you are, the bones don't really move unless you're growing from infancy into adulthood. So the first thing you need to learn is proportions, the bones and the relationship between those bones. The second thing you need to learn are the planes of not just the face, not just the arm, not just the hand, the leg, but everything, the general planes of the body. So if we're looking at these 3D figures over here, learning the general planes of, like this muscular guy, you want to break down some of these shapes and start to think about how this upper portion of the shoulder transitions into the upper portion of the arm, into the forearm, the lower portion. How is the front different from the back? Obviously, these are really stylized and simplistic shapes, but it's still the same basic principles from something that's realistic to something that is more stylized. So that's number 2. The third thing you need to learn are the muscles, which is a lot, right? There's a lot of muscles going on in the body, but for the most part, there's not very many that actually affect the visual portion of what you need to learn. Like if you're just looking at the front, there are only like 3 or 4 major sections of the torso that you need to learn. There's only like 4 or 5 major sections of the arm that you need to learn. There's not a lot, but that is something that you need to learn and study. From there, the last part, number 4, is just filling in the gaps. This is like starting to get into the nitty-gritty of what you don't know. And this is where I'll start to talk about, and we'll be looking at later, some more studies. So starting to work on something like, I was just talking about an arm, starting to work on an arm, finding that place where you have a gap in your knowledge, where you start to sculpt the upper portion of the shoulder into the upper portion of the bicep, tricep, etc. And you get a little confused or things aren't looking quite right. That's where you need to start like getting in and, trying to figure out what's going on under the surface there and learning more about what you're trying to create. So find those areas of struggle and just like, that's kind of level 4, right? The ultimate level where you've learned all the basics, you've learned the proportions, you've learned the major planes, you've learned the muscles and kind of a little bit more about what's going on there. And now it's just like filling in the gaps. So that is my real, like, just honest opinion on what you should be looking for in terms of studying anatomy. So much I see all these like little tips and tricks that feel like it's advice, but you like actually leave that video or you leave that tutorial and you're like, did I really learn anything from that? So hopefully those 4 things are like actionable things that you can look at. You can find where you are on that scale. Are you on proportions? Are you on planes? Are you on muscles? Or are you past the basics and you're like starting to fill in the blanks? So hopefully that's something that you can take away from this video or this stream and start to actionably take advantage of as you move forward in your anatomy studies. All right, spooky time, Tyler Dane, welcome. we're gonna get in here and start sculpting some skulls here. But I hope that was some helpful advice for you in terms of just like how you can go about learning anatomy. I'm gonna show you guys where I am. So I'm on that, step 4, right? Filling in the gaps. And we're gonna be doing that specifically with a skull. So give me a second here to set up my camera. I was playing around with this filter earlier and it was freaking out. It was like bugging out hard, but it looks like it's working now. So I got a skull reference there. We got our big muscle boy. Got a few other models here. But we're gonna be starting with our good friend, the sphere. We all know him. We all love him. He's our best friend. Let's make sure our pen's working. Uh-oh. Hold on. No, we're good. Okay. Sometimes that pressure sensitivity is a little bugged. All right, so we're going to be sculpting a skull. And feel free to pause, hit pause, ask a question along the way as we go here. But let me make sure I got my other... I don't think I'll need other references. I'll just keep chat open over here so I can see what you guys are saying. Welcome, Edwin. Yeah, all live streams that I create get uploaded on my YouTube channel later. If you go to my YouTube channel and just click on there's like the videos tab, and then right next to it, it's kind of a little hidden. It just says like live. It might be further down the list. But just click on that, and that's where the live stream will be later. I believe that we are good to go here. Oh, wait. One suggestion real quick. I'm trying to improve my character, and I have all the knowledge of anatomy, but there is an issue with finishing. It just doesn't look polished. What should I do? You have all the knowledge of anatomy? Oh my god. I wish I had all the knowledge of anatomy. That's good for you. Let's see. With finishing, it doesn't look polished. Ooh. That's a tough one. There could be a bunch of different things that you could do in terms of polish. You probably need to figure out where that lack of knowledge is, right? Is it in your colors? Is it just in your forms? Are things looking unrefined? I am going to be doing a demo later on. If not today, I should be doing it today, depending on how much time we have, on how you can clean up your shapes and get really refined, clean forms, which is, what I'm pretty well known for. So stick around and we'll get to that. And if not, it'll be on my YouTube channel later. All right. One sec, just making sure we are good over here. All right, cool. So we are going to be sculpting a skull. You can see I have my reference over here in the top right corner of the screen. I'm just going to be using that. A front and side view is totally fine. I normally only work with one image anyway, so having two is like amazing. And we are going to be talking about anatomy in this video, specifically level 4 of anatomy. So in the main levels of studying anatomy, you start with proportions, then you move on to the planes of the body, then you move on to muscles and starting to understand more about what's going on underneath the surface. And then level 4, you start filling in the gaps in your knowledge. I've sculpted a lot of heads in my day, but I still have gaps in my knowledge, and I'm not afraid to admit that, especially when it comes to something that I've sculpted hundreds of times or thousands of times. I have no idea how many heads and faces I've sculpted. So we're going to be creating a skull. It's not going to be super realistic. We're going to be focusing on those kind of 3 main areas, focusing on proportions, planes, and a little bit more about what's going on underneath the surface. But because it's just kind of bone and skeleton, we're not going to be doing muscles or anything like that. All right, let's get into it and start with the basic shapes here. So the backside of the skull, if you look over here, it's pretty much a sphere. It's a little elongated. It's a little, stretched toward the back. So it's not perfectly round or spherical. But we'll get in now and start creating the front plane of the face. So I like to split up the skull into 2 major sections to start. This back side, this spherical section, and then this front section, which is kind of like a wedge. And if you guys saw my last demo, that's on my YouTube channel if you haven't seen it, where I'm talking about how I go about blocking out a face. That'll be really helpful for you in terms of understanding this process even more, if you'd like to dive into that. So this is kind of what I start thinking about when I'm working on a head. And I like to keep things separated, split up into different sections, but you absolutely do not need to. You can work however you want. Once I start doing that, I start kind of getting in more information, specifically in terms of plane changes. So there are a few different plane changes that I like to look for. And I'm just going to go ahead and combine these for ease of use and Dynamesh them. Dynamesh is just a quick tool. You can see that I had two separate pieces there and just really quickly combined them. And it's going to let me dynamically update my geometry. You can see how it redistributed that there. So that's a nice little tool that I'm going to be using as I move forward. So let's just start by marking up our surface. I'm just going to carve in really simplistic shapes. So something roughly where the eyes will go, something roughly where the nose will go, something roughly where the mouth will go. And then we're going to start working on refining some of that. Another thing you're going to notice about the skull is that the hinge of the jaw is separated from this piece. We'll split that off and separate it later on, but let's just start by keeping things connected here in the beginning, and then we'll get in and start working on that. All right, so let's just start. We've got these basic kind of landmarks picked out, and now we can just start pushing and pulling some things around. I'm just using my move brush here, looking up at our reference image, noticing as much as I can. And when I'm doing a little study like this, I kind of like to remove any what I feel like is a preconceived notion that I might have. If I, have made something a million times one way, I might like to try doing it a different way this time, just to see what happens. If it ends up failing, that's okay. At least I tried something new. It's better than doing it the same way a million times and not making any progress. So I might try something a little new here as I continue to play around with some shapes. What's going on, Nap? Welcome. Face. Hello, hello. Is it possible if someone uses ZBrush for rendering without to bother yourself going to different softwares? So is it possible to render in ZBrush and not other softwares? It absolutely is, yeah. An artist that comes to mind, Raphael Grassetti. I'm sure a lot of you know him. Really fantastic artist. To my knowledge, he renders almost everything in ZBrush. He does a lot of different render passes, and then he composites his stuff in Photoshop. So, it's definitely possible. I think that there are a lot better tools for rendering personally, but that is, totally up to you. If ZBrush is like the one software you have and you don't want to bother going to something else or learning something else, it's definitely possible. I personally use Blender for rendering myself. I find the Cycles engine to be quite nice. It's not, the best in the world, based on a lot of opinions, including mine, but it is absolutely just fine, for my purposes at least. So, I would say that's true for really any tool. You can use whatever you like, but, I like to use the best tool for the job if I can. And obviously, everybody's going to have opinions and having their own biases, but I believe like ZBrush is the best tool for the job when it comes to sculpting. So I'm going to use ZBrush for sculpting. Now, is that actually true? I think so, yeah. I think by quite a wide margin, yeah. Will it always be true? I doubt it. I really highly doubt it. There's always new technology coming around. All right, so we got some cool shapes starting to form up. And you'll also notice I'm not in a huge hurry with this. Things are getting stretched. Just taking my time with it. Not trying to rush. I'm just trying to observe and take my time. I'll jump around a lot. I'll come back to these eyes. I'll move around to the nose, start working on that mouth and separating that jaw here in a little bit. And just keep moving forward. In terms of brushes, not really using anything fancy. Right now I'm just using the move brush, my custom clay brush, and a little bit of trim. That's about it. I was also using my custom sharp soft brush here, which is just it's kind of like a Dam Standard or Damien Standard brush, but it's a little softer, a little more gentle. Damien Standard brush is pretty sharp. But using any kind of that style of brush is really helpful for just getting in, carving into your surface. There's that basic shape. Let's go ahead and separate that jaw now. So I think I've talked about that idea enough. Now we can actually do it. So there's our top section, right? I'll turn on double so we can see up inside of there. And now I'll just split that off. And all of those functions are down here in the split menu. I have a custom pop-up menu that I'm using. That's where you can find that stuff. And I'm not going to get in here and sculpt individual teeth probably. More so just focus on this basic shape. Let's turn off the lower jaw for a minute. Now, the teeth, if you notice here, really important part about this is how much curvature there is. The teeth are pretty much a cylinder. If you've ever heard me talk about sculpting the barrel of the mouth is created by the teeth. Your forms on the front of your face or on your surface of your body are created by what's going on underneath the surface. So understanding that information is very pertinent to creating an accurate form. Not to say that you can't create accurate forms without understanding that information, but obviously understanding that is going to be a lot more helpful for creating those shapes. All right, so we're starting to get that barrel of the teeth there, looking pretty good. Corn Father, welcome. Fantastic name, love it. Father of the corn, related to the children of the corn. All right, there's our lower jaw. Got a little nastiness going on there. I'll just delete that real quick. Fill in our holes, beautiful. Fill in our holes, only something you can say while 3D modeling without it being weird. It's probably still weird. All right, let's pull down here. Start shaping up that jaw. And that jaw comes back real far. We can see how far that comes back. And notice this part jutting out here, and then it transitions into the teeth. We're gonna add like probably just like a little cut here, something like this to separate that. Something really simple. And all I'm going to do is create a plane change to make sure that we're representing the teeth down here into the chin. Now, one thing I haven't really talked about while working on this yet are the proportions. And that is like the kind of step one of this, but I kind of blasted past it pretty quick. Mainly what we're looking for, if we divide the head in half, the eyes, depending on the person, can roughly fall right in the middle. So I can move my eyes down a little. Looking at this, it looks like the eyes are actually pretty high on the head. So I'm not too worried about it. Those kinds of things are meant to be rules of thumb, less so than hard and fast. You know, everyone follows these rules. If you look at a group of 10 people, picked at random, you know, there's going to be a ton of variety between all those people, especially in something as simple as where their eyes land on their head. The great mighty, what is it? Conquer. Oh, Conquer's Bad Fur Day. Yes. Never played it, but it's supposed to be good. Made by Rare, if I'm not mistaken, the same people who did Banjo-Kazooie. Rare Ltd. The greatest dev team of the late 90s, early 2000s. So we transition below the nose, down into the teeth. We pull up. We got a little notch here in the cheekbone. And let's take a look at probably making this a little less thick. You can see there's actually a gap back here. I'm not gonna worry about, hollowing out this area. I'm not trying to create a super accurate skull here. More so to just capture those surface forms. My main concern is making sure that this distance isn't too great. So I think I just need to reduce that a little. I'll just pull in on that. And then stay tuned because we are going to be doing a hand after this, and then I'm going to be talking about how you can go through the process of creating some super clean geometry. So if you've seen any of my stuff and you're like, how does he get such clean forms? How does he create, why can't I do that? Well, I'm going to teach you how. It's not as hard as it looks. You just got to know what you're doing. That's kind of a lie. It is not easy to get super clean shapes, but I'm going to show you a process to make it a lot easier for you. No need to fight your geometry, at the very least. Make your tools work for you. All right. Now, the teeth tend to be a little longer here in the front and then shorter towards the back as well. That's something I'm noticing. So as that wraps around, it gets a little more short, and looks like the front teeth are pretty similar. So it kind of gives it the illusion that it is smiling or grinning because of the difference in the length of teeth. That's really interesting. I've never thought about that before. Now, that's why we do these things. To study and learn more. Find where these gaps in our knowledge are. All right, let's come back up to the nose and start playing with that shape a little more. Especially from the side view, I'd like to pull out a little more here and pull back some. Give a little more depth for us. You like how I work high poly, but it still looks creamy and smooth, not lumpy. It takes skill. It does take skill. One thing that's really great about recording yourself working, sculpting, drawing, whatever, is you kind of get like a highlight, or not a highlight reel, what would it be called? Like a review of your own work, and you get to see your own growth in a really nice way. So what's great is I've been sculpting on YouTube for a long time, so I can go back and look at old videos and see my process and how I might have done something, 5 years ago or even 10 years ago, and I can see exactly just massive improvements in terms of things like speed or just like mindset and workflow, where working on something like this, this might have taken me, an hour or more to do something like this, and we've done it here in just a few minutes. We've gotten the basic shape and proportions down. I really do enjoy that part of recording and creating content online. So if you are looking for a way to grow faster as an artist, I highly recommend recording yourself. It's a really great way to get an objective view of your process, and it's really helpful for in the future if you ever feel stuck or feel like you're not improving. you're improving. You're getting better. It's just not always so easy to see. So just go take a look at some of those videos, and you'll get a really good idea of how quickly you actually are improving. All right, so this edge here, it's making the mouth feel really awkward. Whenever you're sculpting anything facially related, it's really easy for you to bake in an expression. And when you do that, it can create a little bit of an awkward feeling in a few different areas. And then you like end up with something that almost looks goofy, or a little. It's a little hard to describe. It'll look like your brain gets stuck on a thing, like the way it looks, and you're like, oh, why is it wrong? And it's like, well, maybe you just need to get rid of the expression. You just need to clean that up a little. And the skull kind of naturally looks, like I said, kind of like it's smiling, like it's grinning. So, some of it's unavoidable. This little notch here, this is the your ear canal, your auditory meatus. I'll try to get that in there a little bit too. Like a little, this is the sternal notch, if I'm not mistaken. There's clavicular sternal notch? Maybe the clavicular sternal notch is down here. It's like skull sternal? I don't remember what it's called. Doesn't matter. But this is where your big neck muscle connects onto your sternocleidomastoid. Everybody's favorite muscle. The invisible skill of sculpting, yeah. Yeah, speed is definitely one of those things where it just comes with time, you know? There's a ton of better sculptors out there than me that when I watch them or see any of their work, when they're like actually sculpting, I'm like, dang, you are so fast. How are you so fast? And it's just experience. Yeah, it's just time. You sculpt more, you get more confident. You make decisions faster because you know exactly what you want, exactly what you're doing. You know where things go. And you don't have to fiddle with it and try to, like, oh, is that right? Oh no, I need to adjust this. You just get it exactly where you need it. Like right now, this little ear hole back here is being annoying. This part's not super important though to me. Just play with that. It's probably fine. Now the skull gets much wider as it goes back on average. Not true for everybody. There's also a few planes of the skull, like general plane changes that I'd like to put in a little harder, just in a few areas, and then I'll knock them back. The skull, it really depends on the person. There's a lot of different shapes that you can see with skulls, depending on age and ethnicity. You can see a skull that, you know, gets a lot wider as it goes back, a lot taller. It's kind of what we got. It's pretty boxy here with this one though, actually. And then we need to take a step back every now and again and kind of refresh our eyes. So let's give that a quick remesh here. Give that a quick second to calculate, and that'll just clean up our geometry. I haven't done this yet, but this will essentially take everything that I've sculpted. So I had 500,000 polys there, and we just converted that down into 10,000 polygons. So even with doing that, we're still capturing all the forms that I had sculpted, but we've gotten rid of all the unnecessary noise. Not that there was like a ton of noise. In some ways you might want that with something like this, because you know, you're sculpting bone, so there's like some texture that you might want. But what I prefer here, especially during this stage, is to just really focus on capturing big shapes. And we can always add texture in later. So I'm gonna blend out this area here for the teeth, coming down into the chin. Maybe make that a little more pointed. Trim and plane out the bottom. Now there is normally a gap here, so I'm not gonna carve in all the way. I'm just gonna carve in a little to represent that gap. So just right through here. I'll just push that in. Just so that there's enough of a dip there. So this is not, we can't really see it here from this angle, but if we look at the front, if you see this little gap right here, it's because the jaw is kind of shaped like a boomer, or not like a boomerang, like a horseshoe from this view. So you get that horseshoe shape, right? Or that U shape. And then this is gone, not here. But I don't want to create a really thin piece of geometry, because not that it's anatomically incorrect, but I don't want to create that because it's a little frustrating to work with sculpturally here in ZBrush. The ZBrush tools do not like super thin pieces of geometry. No software does. That's why when talking about clothes, somebody was asking about clothes recently if I would do a tutorial on that. I have a few over on my Gumroad, but one of my main tips when working on clothes is to create not thickness, but the illusion of thickness. And if you don't know how to do that, you can learn about it in one of my tutorials. I covered in all of them. But I do that with a lot of my stuff, where I'm not actually sculpting or creating the thing, but I'm creating the illusion of the thing. Like, a lot of people probably don't realize or think about that a lot with like things like hair, right? I sculpt almost all my hair, and when I take away all the stray flyaways and the smaller or medium pieces, and it's just like one big chunk, it kind of looks like a big piece of plastic. Like, it feels awkward. But not until you have all those like secondary and tertiary pieces does it really start feeling more alive. Oh, we need to square out that jaw, huh? Let's pull that out more. Give it a more wide angle. Hey, there we go. Straight down. And actually, a little curved in too. I'll exaggerate that. Very nice. All right, my cheekbones are exaggerated quite a lot here as well. So I'll play with pushing that back in. Let's see. What else kind of sticks out to us at this stage? There's definitely some changes I need to make here to the eyes and nose and front section of the face. Looking right around here, this area. So I'm going to come through here and start to clean up some of that. And I'm going to change this some. That was very annoying. Kind of droning on and on. Alright, I think that's starting to feel a lot better. I was noticing kind of how angled that was from the side. So, a lot of people have asked me about perspective lately and what I do when I am sculpting. During the early stage of blockout, I don't like to use perspective really at all. I think it kind of gets in the way. But after a while, you probably will want to turn on perspective. I just use the default value of 50. That's like a 50 millimeter camera lens. For like something like a portrait, you'd use somewhere around 100, 120, right around there typically. So if you want to get that to a longer lens, you can play with that. 50 is just strong enough to cause like some distortion for me, to where it's noticeable and I can get in and play with it a little more and refresh my eyes. So I like to swap back and forth as often as possible once I get a little more into things. All right. I'm going to make sure that I have enough of a forehead here as well. I don't want it to curve back too fast. You know, right now, kind of dissipates rather quickly. And we need a little more of some kind of protuberance there. All right. My area around my eyes is feeling pretty thick as well, so I'll go through and or narrow that area out. Whoops. Symmetry causing me some errors. And for this, I'm just using the mask lasso. So I like to use masks to just control or get finer control over what I'm sculpting. Without them, it can be, you know, a little bit of a mess to move things around with your brush. But with it, it makes things quite a bit easier. And this is transitioning pretty awkwardly. So let's fix that up. And we'll start to go through and clean up some shapes here and there, but for the most part, I want to take my time with refining what I already have. So, in terms of secondary shapes, little differences here and there. We can start putting in a little bit of that information. Everything that I've created up to this point, for the most part, is a primary shape. There are some little secondary things here and there, but we're nowhere near a stage where we want to start worrying about details. And we probably won't get too into details here with this today, but we'll do a little bit. Because who doesn't love details? I like seeing all these little ridges on bones. There's a little one here. Just finding all these new things that I, don't think about too often or learned about a long time ago that don't necessarily matter a ton when you're sculpting a face because they don't affect the surface in a huge way, but it's just fun getting in here doing a study like this. I love doing this kind of stuff. I feel like every time I sculpt anything, I feel like I'm always learning something new. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way, like when you're in the middle of a project, but I think if you look back, there's little things that you pull from every little project. It's hard to have that perspective, though, in the moment.
Took that motherfucker to the side when you pull up. Double me, you know I hit the tide when you know what. Mission, lie to me, cause my bitches hit the switch. Pull up.
And then there are some little cracks and different things in the skull as well that we're mostly going to ignore here. To get a nice, quick bone texture as well, a really nice technique that I like to use is a trim brush, or even a planer brush will work fine. And just kind of quickly scraping that over your surface, you can get kind of like this rough, dimpled-like texture. And it's super quick and easy to do. You can also hold the Alt key to add surface or add form to your surface. And then kind of go back and forth on those two. And you got to be careful not to get too spray strokey with it because it can look really repetitive if you're not careful. I do not have a shoulder or back problem using such a big screen. In fact, I have the opposite. I specifically bought this tablet a number of years ago for that very reason. I had a much smaller tablet, and that was giving me a lot of neck issues. So I bought my 24/7? I forget. I'd have to break out a tape measure. I think it's the 24-inch Cintiq. They don't make this one anymore. They have a new one. But I bought this Cintiq specifically to alleviate the back problems and the hunching that I was constantly doing. And I think the only thing that you got to get used to with something like this is probably the arm movement, because you constantly have your arm up, not really resting on anything a ton. And that can be really tiring at first, but you get used to it pretty quick. But yes, definitely the opposite. That's exactly why I bought the big one. So I can mostly look straight ahead. Before you know, I'm like hunched up in a little ball like that. Not very fun.
Pardon me, Dr. Patterson, but your flatulence has no odor. At what point in history did a doctor become more than a trusted and learned friend who visited and treated the ill?
This is also why I love studies like this. They're so chill. You don't have to, be in a rush, be in a race. You can just hang out. This is something you can definitely do with other people too. I think it's actually more fun to do with other people. So then you can compare and kind of talk about what you learned, what you discovered along the way. If you learned anything new, or maybe feel like you didn't. It's definitely important to have a community of other artists. Some fun stuff going on here with the tip of the chin, where it's like kind of pulling in here. It's not something really I've ever noticed before. Doesn't look like it's too exaggerated either. It's like that edge wrapping around and kind of flowing up and in. I'm obviously exaggerating that a ton there, but it's like the basic idea at least. All right, we're in a pretty good spot here with our skull in terms of big shapes, and we're working on secondary forms, starting to make some progress there. Pretty happy with the direction. And now it's more of just how much do we want to push on this. You'll see me swapping back to Dynamesh here for a moment. That's also another thing I get asked about a lot. Like, when do you switch from Dynamesh to Z-Remesher? And I'm like, that's the fun part. You don't. You just jump back and forth, depending on which one you need. Or Sculptress Pro. Sculptress mode is super cool, but I don't use it too often. Dynamesh tends to work just fine for me.
Should be not just to prevent death, but also to improve the quality of life.
I do have a Discord, but my Discord is just specifically for people in the Appeal Academy or people that join my Patreon. At least for now. All right, let's make these eye cavities. You know, I could make the eye cavity deeper, or another idea I had was just paint them, fill them black to kind of give that illusion, which is definitely a viable strategy. I might just do that. Let me make them a little deeper first and then decide. Like I said earlier, it's all about the illusion. The illusion. illusion of depth. All right, that looks pretty good. Quick selection. All right, and now I'm going to merge these two. And one thing that's really important to note here about the jaw, that a lot of people, I don't think, who don't understand what's going on underneath the surface, when they're opening a character's mouth and drawing it, you know, they do one of these. Ba, ba, ba. Ha, ha, ha. That's not how the mouth articulates. The mouth rotates from the joint back here and opens like so. And what that does is when your mouth is open, your chin isn't just going straight down, your chin is going down and backward at an angle down to here, which is really important when you're drawing a character from the front view and you can like see into the mouth because it's angled down, right? Or from the side view when you have the jaw angle changing and it's not just like pulling straight down. That's not how it works. And that just kind of looks awkward. And you might be looking at it. There's so many things, and I bring this one up specifically because it's one of those things that you can look at and not understand why it's wrong, but know internally that something looks off. And that's true with a lot of things. And when you have that feeling, I would say trust your gut. And, you know, you might not know what's going on there. Maybe ask some of your peers. If you have some artist friends or other people, and, you know, see if you can get to the root of what's going on there. Or, you know, ask a pro. Just try to find out, where's the gap? Where's the gap in that knowledge? All right. To push on this a little more, I'd probably have to rest my eyes for a few minutes. So what I'm going to do here is merge these together into a single piece like that. And then we'll take a moment to do some questions. Make sure I didn't miss anything in chat real quick. Oh yeah, monitor arm for sure. I have one of those attached to mine right now. It's an Ergotron arm. I think it holds up to like 50 pounds or something like that. And my monitor doesn't weigh anywhere near 50 pounds. I don't know of any monitor that weighs that much. I don't, that'd be insane. You have a 32-inch tablet at work and it rests on a table and your back's killing you. That's what I'm saying. Get the Ergotron arm, get something to get you more upright. It is a game changer. If you are an artist and you work, you know, full time at a computer, on a tablet, or, you know, at a computer screen, I really do think that ergonomics are super important. I realized all too quickly after, you know, a year or two of being hunched over that it was really affecting my health in a negative way. So definitely get that settled now if you can, if possible. Doing a lot of art while I'm in Discord, listening or talking with everybody. Nice. Jumo is doing some sculpting right now as well. Awesome. Love to hear it. Do you start sculpting with a realistic face or just realism and then work on simplifying? That's a really great question. No. Yes and no. It depends. Depends what you want to do. I was actually just talking about this with another artist this morning. I have a collab coming up. I won't spoil with who, but it's in the works and it's coming very soon. But I was talking with them bright and early this morning because they are on the other side of the world in a different time zone. So it was midnight for them. It was bright and early for me. But we were talking about how so often we see like bad art advice, like, oh, you want to do stylized characters? That's the thing you want to do? Oh, well, you got to start with realism first. And it's like, no, you don't. It's like the advice of you need to draw before you sculpt. And it's like, no, No, you don't. What? Why? No. You should be practicing and doing the exact thing you want to do. So if you want to do stylized characters, you should be practicing stylized characters. You should be referencing and learning from stylized character artists. You should be not just pulling reference from realism. If you want to practice from realism and try to stylize that, that's awesome. That's a really great practice and a really fun thing to do. I like doing it myself a lot, but I really think that you should be learning and studying stylized artworks if that is specifically the thing you want to do. Not to say that studying realism and practicing realism won't inform knowledge and help improve your stylized work as well, but the fastest and best way for you to get better at stylized stuff is to practice and learn the stylized stuff. It almost sounds like too straightforward when you say it like that. No, I do not have a crease on my head from wearing headphones, but I do have matted hair from wearing headphones. Tips on getting discouraged on the beginning or alien phase, as I like to call it, when things are looking awkward or awful. You said, trust the process and all that, but my brain starts losing hope midway through. That's all too true and real for, I think, all of us. I think that's something that just kind of comes with time and in practice. The more you do it, the more comfortable and confident you're going to get with that kind of thing. What that says to me is, maybe you haven't gone through the full process a ton of times. You're maybe more beginner or intermediate. And I would say, I'll be honest, it's really hard. It is really hard when you're in those beginning stages and you're like, this look bad. This look real bad. But I know it's the cliche trust the process thing, but in some ways it is true. Another thing that really helps me is and it's what I'm doing right now actually, is I'm hiding my sculpt from myself and I'm not looking at it. The reason why I'm not looking at it is because I'm giving my eyes a second to just refresh, take a break. I don't want to look at it. I want to refresh, come back to it with fresh eyes and be able to see all those mistakes and how I can improve upon them. Because the more you look at something, especially as you're building it up slowly, the more you get used to seeing the mistakes, and then they don't pop out. They don't stand out to you at all. So I really recommend taking a break and then coming back. And for some people, for me, I'm just taking a few minutes here to do that. But sometimes I'll take a day. Sometimes you can take a week on a big project. I find that to be the most helpful thing. Do you think powering through or stepping away is better for getting through things? That's an excellent question, and it really depends. Like I just said, when I'm talking about something like this, where I'm just really quickly stepping away for a moment to refresh my eyes because there's a lot of mistakes and stuff going on there, but I'm not necessarily sure exactly what all of them are or what I need to do here. I think for that kind of thing, yeah, stepping away is super helpful and powerful. But if we're talking about for burnout, I have one really, really good tip for burnout, and it's in my drawing guide that I just released, but I'm just going to tell you what it is here for free. I'm not going to make you go buy the guide to go get this one tip. Go buy the guide if you want. It's on my Gumroad, the link in the description. But the advice is for burnout is that if you are experiencing burnout and you don't know what's going on, you need to stop. You need to take a break, and whatever time you would spend drawing, sculpting, creating art, doing whatever, doesn't matter. Whatever your thing is that you're burnt out on, take a break, and whatever time you would spend doing that thing, use that time to reassess and ask yourself some important questions like, why am I feeling this way? Am I still enjoying this thing? Am I not enjoying the particular subject matter that I'm working on? Is it the time of day that I'm working on this thing? Are other things getting in the way of me working on this thing? Or is it more the location that you're working on is also super important? Are you working in an area that's not conducive to creating? You know, I really like going to cafes and drawing, but a lot of the time they're really busy and loud, and sometimes there's kids there like screaming in my ear right next to me. You know, that can be really annoying, but for the most part, I love drawing in cafes. So, you know, take some time to reassess what's going wrong. Why are you feeling that way? I think that's the most important thing for burnout. How many subscribers will it take for you to sculpt a portrait of your wife? 1 million subscribers. You can hold me to it. What's going on, Miro? Welcome, welcome. Anatomy is feeling good when you're in a neutral A pose, but not when you start posing. Woo. That's a whole different ball game. We're talking about pose, we're talking about gesture, balance, weight. Hey, I have a tutorial for that on my Gumroad. That's a really complicated question, and it really depends on a lot of different things. Here very soon, actually, probably a little preemptive for me to tell you guys this, but I don't mind since we're just here hanging out on a live stream and there's only like 35 people here. So no worries. But very soon I'm going to be allowing people to send in their sculpts for some critiques, and we're going to be doing those in live streams. And could be happening as early as a couple weeks from now. So be on the lookout for that link, and we can maybe take a look at your sculpt. So what if it's study or work dependent? So if it's like work dependent and you're like actually like really bad off and you're not doing okay mentally, use whatever vacation time you have. Like talk to your boss. Like your mental health is important. You should stop and find out where the problem is. If it's study, you know, talk to your advisor. See what you can do about it. You know, if you don't address the problem and you just keep pushing forward, you're just going to perpetuate the problem and you're never going to solve it. Like, you need to stop. You need to take a break. You need to assess what's going on. Like, why are you feeling burnt out? Are you feeling just like tired and like, oh, this is hard? And like, that's fine. Like, you know, take a break, come back. You know, sometimes you can think of those like types of points as like, yeah, I just need to push through this homework assignment. Like that's something you can do. I believe in you. You can push through that homework assignment. You can potentially push through that big project you got going on at work, and if it's just difficult and it's tiring. But if you feel that way every single day, every hour, and it's not getting better, come on. You got to take a break. You got to stop. You got to chill out. You got to use that time to assess and figure out where the problem is, or else it's not going to get any better. And you don't want that. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for me. I don't want that for anybody. All right, guys. Let's now take a look at our skull since I've taken a moment to say some words, and let's see if we can do anything here. Are there any big changes I want to make? I actually don't think it looks too bad proportionally. I'm pretty happy with it, but I think I could do a couple little things here and there. Play around with a few different shapes. Maybe widen out that jaw. Maybe start to taper in on that skull, the back side of the skull especially. I'm noticing how mine's sticking out a little too far. I talked about widening out that skull towards the back, but in that middle section here, it's kind of looking a little ovoid or oval shaped. So that's kind of looking a little weird. So let's like push that in. Zygomatic, this little bone here, zygomatic process coming through here. Whoop. That guy, he's sticking out a little far. Feeling a little odd. So we'll adjust him. And I probably won't do much more in terms of sculpting on this guy, other than using my move brush and pushing and pulling some things around. Whoops. I say, as I grab my trim brush. I just wanted to fill in some of the gaps here. Alright, and then I'm just going to give this a little schmattering. Very technical sculpting word there, schmattering. of texture. And check this out. We're gonna go up to surface, down to surface, I should say, noise. Zoom in on that. A little hard to see down here. Increase that strength. Somewhere around there. Make it a little bigger. We'll click on OK. And that is just strong enough. Then we're gonna go to clay polish. And if I can, I'm gonna set this to -1 and this to 1, which will just help flatten my surface out there. And there we go. We got a little schmattering, as I said, very technical term, schmattering of texture. And if you want, you can go back over top of that with your clay brush or whatever, smooth, you know, hit it up with whatever. I'll do that here just because it's a little strong in a few areas and I can get some of that kind of bony skeletal feel back by doing this. And while I do this, I'll hang out and answer some more questions. Crunching for the ECTs. ECTs, I assume that is some kind of test for college, if I had to guess. Like an ACT? Is it similar? And you'll notice here that I'm kind of varying my brush size as well in a few areas. And I'm stroking with the direction of my surface as well. Some randomness, but for the most part, flow with the form. Sculpt with the form, people. Yochito, welcome. Yeah, it sounds like, you know, you're in a stressful time if you got some tests coming up, and I totally understand that feeling. But that time will pass, and you will be in a stage where you no longer have to worry about your ECTs, and that'll be over with. Things will be a little more chill, or you'll have something else to worry about. There's always another mountain to climb. Gotcha. Well, hey, if it's not something that you can control more than what you've already done, there's no use worrying about it. It's kind of my life motto. If it's not something you can control, like, why worry about it essentially twice as much on an outcome that you don't get to control? Like, if you've done all the prep work that you can, like a job interview or something, like, don't stress out over whether or not you're gonna get the job. Like, either you will or you won't. And, like, if you don't, there'll be something else. Don't worry about it. Like, no need to, like, spend mental energy worrying about something that may or may not happen. If it doesn't happen and you wanna, like, you know, you totally feel free to, like, be upset about that. I think that's really healthy. But worrying about it before you know you get the result, that's like, you're not doing yourself any favors there. That's just no bueno. Like, I recently got married. Very recently. A couple weeks ago. And it's an outdoor wedding. And we were really kind of worried about whether or not it was going to rain or not. Because it was calling for rain. Like, it was going to storm all day. And we decided that, you know, there's no use. Like, either it's going to rain and the wedding's going to be fine. It'll be okay, you know. Yes, we paid all this money to have it as an outdoor wedding and all this stuff and spent a ton of time preparing things. But, like, we can't control the weather. Either it's going to happen or it's not. And there's no use worrying about it. And in that case, it ended up fine. It ended up not raining. and things were beautiful. We had the outdoor wedding that we wanted. It was great. But, you know, if it had gone the other way, we had already determined that, you know, we weren't gonna, you know, of course we can be upset about that, but there was no use worrying about it before it happened, just because there was nothing we could really do about that. We couldn't control it. All right. I'm really happy with that quick level of texture. Really simplistic. Like I said, if anything, I could paint in the eye cavity, the nose cavity, and maybe even like behind the mouth to like black it out so that you can't really see in there. But I'm actually fine with that. Like if we did a little BPR on that, it'd probably do it already. Start getting some of that dark shadow in there. So pretty cool. All right. I say from here we take a little moment, make sure we didn't miss anything in chat, and then probably move on to our next demo where we're going to work on some hands. When modeling with a reference, do you have to have it on screen? Nope, not at all. Sometimes I have it on a phone if I'm drawing. You know, sometimes I have it on another monitor. Sometimes I've printed them out. The point of a reference is just to have a visual representation of it to visually reference. Doesn't matter if it's on a screen or on this screen or another screen or wherever. Shouldn't matter, at least. I just have it here so that you guys can see what I'm looking at as well, and then I can like point out different areas and say like, "Oh, do you see this? That's pretty neat, huh?" Let's see. We're gonna do a hand next. So actually, let's go back to one of these guys. Let's check out this guy's hand. So this is a base hand that I have. I have a few hands that I use as base inserts. But I think what I'm going to do today is look at a more realistic hand and use that as a reference and probably stylize it based on that. We were talking about that earlier, actually. That's a great exercise. And then for my hand, gasp. Nobody freak out. But we're going to use a cube instead of a sphere. Nah, I'm kidding. We're using a sphere. You guys thought I'd actually use a cube? Come on. You guys know me. I'm not going to use a cube. We always use spheres. It actually doesn't matter. A cube would actually probably be easier, but I'll use a sphere just because I can. Absolutely. Happy to help in whatever little way I can. And thank you for the kind words. All right. So I saw a couple questions about some beginner advice from the last stream that I did, and I also saw a few other people in here asking about that earlier. But I kind of wanted to save time between demos so that I could talk about it right now. Let me grab my camera. I really need to make this easier to change. I was trying to set it up before stream, but I couldn't get it set up like very quickly. Anyway, so I've been getting asked a lot about advice for, you know, just starting out, whether you're in 3D art or 2D art. I have a few different pieces of advice for people that are like just getting started, 3 specifically. And this is something that I talk about in my How to Easily Draw guide, which just released last week and is available down in the description. So the first thing is building a habit. And the easiest way to build a habit, in my opinion, there are quite a few different things you can do, but the easiest thing that you can do to build a habit is start simple. So like with drawing, just have a 1-minute rule where every day you sit down, same place, same time, and draw for 1 minute. And you find really quickly and easily that you start, you know, you get everything prepared, you sit down, you're drawing, you're sculpting, you're doing whatever, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm already here, I'm already doing it, so I might as well keep doing it. And just by having that low barrier to entry of something like 1 minute makes it super easy to get in and do that every day. And then if you like, you have a day where everything's like crazy and you're like, well, I can still sit down for like 1 minute. I can spare 60 seconds to like do a thing. Whether you have a sketchbook with you that you pull with you somewhere, whatever. Like, it's 60 seconds. Come on. Like, you can do that before you go to sleep or like right when you wake up. You can make time for 1 minute. So that's my first piece of advice, build a habit. And that's a really great, easy way to build a habit. The second is something that I was just talking about, which is find a community. Whether that be here on my YouTube channel, whether that be over on my second YouTube channel, Drawbly, or with somebody else, or like your group of friends that IRL and not on the internet, like whoever, your mom and dad, I don't care, but find an art community that's going to help support you, encourage you, and some people that you can grow along with, people that are better than you, that are going to help spur you on and encourage you. I know a ton of artists that are a million times better than I am. And I love those artists because I love looking up to them and always learning new things myself. Like, being a professional artist doesn't mean that you've reached the end goal and that you stop growing. There's always somewhere to go. There's always going to be somebody that's better than you. And don't look at that as competition. Look at that as like a friend or a colleague that you can learn and grow from. So find a community, and in that also give back if you can, whatever knowledge you learn. If you can teach other people that knowledge, you're going to learn it better yourself. And I find that to be super helpful and encouraging. And then my last piece of advice, which is super, super cliche. So build a habit, find a community. And the super cliche piece of advice, which I'm going to give here in just a second. Sorry. My super cliche last piece of advice is not to give up. Sorry, I had a notification. Don't give up, which sounds so cliche, and I'm sorry for it, but it's true, because as you're drawing, as you're sculpting, as you're creating art, or growing in literally any field, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail a million times over and over and over again. I fail all the time. It's like my motto. I fail every day. It's great. But failure is how you learn. You don't learn from always being successful. You learn from failure. That is where we learn and where we grow. You tell a kid not to touch a hot stove, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go touch the hot stove because they don't know any better. Telling someone something doesn't make them learn it. Failing makes the person learn the thing. Touching the hot stove, right? So, you can fail as many times as you want, but the one thing that you can do, but I don't want you to do, is give up, because that is the true failure, when you quit something. So just keep going. Remember, with art, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Just keep trucking along. Even when you feel like you're not growing, you are growing, I promise. And you will get there eventually. Just give it time. Give it time. All right, let's get in and sculpt some hands. I'm so excited to sculpt some hands. I used to hate sculpting hands, actually. Sculpting hands used to be really hard, painful, tiring. I hated it. But now, sculpting hands is really hard, painful, tiring, and I love it. Accountability, woo! Heck yeah. I love accountability. And by love, I mean, sometimes hate it, because, you don't want to do the thing, but other people hold you accountable. I would love to put the book on Amazon as a physical copy. Currently, it's just a digital guide on my Gumroad, link down below. How to easily draw every day. Would absolutely love to have a physical book on Amazon. We just don't have the bandwidth for going through the process for something like that right now. Drawbly is kind of a side thing that me and my wife Abby do, where we do draw all the time, but not only are we drawing, but we're trying to create content for the YouTube channel. And that takes, as a side thing, it takes a lot of time. And even just creating this digital guidebook, we started that last year. and we just released it like last week. So it was a long time coming, a thing that we worked on for a long time, and you know, we both got other stuff going on in our lives. So we would love to have it on Amazon, probably will in the future. When? No promises yet. Don't know. Some point though. Oh, have not sculpted hands yet. Ugh, you're missing out. Well, we gotta find us some hands. Oh, you know what? Actually, what I was gonna do. Somebody was asking me. Oh, wait, sorry. Somebody was asking me just a moment ago, do you have to use reference on screen? And I'm gonna be referencing my own hand. Hey, check it out, ring. Married. Told you it was real. I'm gonna be referencing my own hand for this sculpt, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. What kind of pose I should do? Maybe I should do like a Spider-Man thwip pose, since the Spider-Verse movie just came out. It's not a bad idea. That'd be a fun one to do. What do you guys think? A sphere, you did it! You've conquered! You've conquered the sculpting software. Yes, we started with a cube and I worked tirelessly until eventually I got to a sphere. It took ages. It is a true work of art. Thank you for recognizing my greatness. All right, I'm gonna try like a Spider-Man, web slinging pose. I think that'd be timely and a pretty cool one. It shouldn't be too crazy hard. But let's start here. We got our sphere. What? He's starting with a sphere? This psychopath. How could he do that? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you start with. You can start with a cube. You can start with a sphere. You can start with a plane. But yeah, I'm gonna be looking at my own hand as I do this. And sculpting hands is tough, because sculpting hands, it's a little bit like sculpting a face, where we look at hands a lot, and if we see something off about a hand, it's really obvious. Like we're really good at seeing if stuff is off with faces, and hands are another one of those things. So what I recommend is take your time. Take your time here with sculpting your hand. I need to make that a little thicker. This is gonna be the fat pad for the thumb. We're gonna create some really basic, simplistic shapes here at first. And then we'll get in and start refining. But just like you would block out anything else here. So that's like what's really difficult about hands, is it's really easy to notice when things are off about them. It can be really frustrating for that reason, but I like a challenge. All right, the little thumb section over here is gonna be a nice, almost like wedge or triangular piece. Something like that. We'll refine it later. We just need something simple. And then for the fingers, we're just gonna create some simple tubes. Let's click on append, and let's see. It doesn't really matter what shape we start with, because I'm gonna initialize this into a cylinder. So it'll become a cylinder no matter what. So we're just gonna do that. And then the finger is roughly the length of the hand. Remember what we were talking about earlier with proportions being number 1. That's like the first thing that we need to worry about. And then we need to get into some different stuff eventually, like the planes and the musculature. All right. Yeah, Spider-Man does sound cool. I love that hand pose. It's very unique and recognizable. There is a tutorial in the that comes with ModMesh that shows you how to go through and like build your different things and how to toggle the visibility, etc. And then I also did a live stream and video last week where I demoed ModMesh. So if you want to see another example of ModMesh, that is another great place where you can see it. If in that tutorial you're not able to follow along, but there should be a tutorial video included with the product. How about tentacles? Ooh, tentacles would be fun. I've made some tentacles. I did I don't know how long you guys, well actually I don't want to do another finger yet. I don't know how long some of you have been using ZBrush, for those that do, but when VDMs were released, I created a tentacle sucker VDM that was pretty fun to make. VDMs are super cool if you guys are unfamiliar with them. I should have made this a cube and then beveled the edges because that would have been a little faster. But this is fine. I'm just gonna keep that as an open shape right now. Or you know what? Actually, let's do this. Let's just, I was going to Z model this, but I think that's a little boring. So let's just work organically. I think that's more fun, personally. All right. Aren't these fun? Nice little fingers. Sausage fingers. Beautiful. Our hand is complete. I would love to take some photos of my hand, but I don't have time to do that. Let's see here. I'm gonna grab, so I don't have to keep pulling my hand up and taking it off the hotkey. Alright, we'll do this. That's fine. Alright, so I have a simple, I'm looking at a hand that's facing the wrong way. I was gonna flip my sculpt. I wanted to find a quick hand, so I don't have to keep looking at mine and like setting my pen down or something. So let me find, there we go. I wanted to find a left hand. Nice stock image. Perfect. Alright, so I'm gonna look at that for a brief moment and do some adjusting. And then I can Dynamesh these together. This is that fat pad of the thumb. We're just gonna work on that. And the resolution's a little too high. And we need to start, still a little too high. Here, let me lower it with Z Remesher. So your hand isn't perfectly flat when you're looking at it. It's got some curvature to it. So we need to get in some of that curvature. And then start sculpting up some of these different shapes, different sections of the hand. And then we'll start aligning the fingers here in just a moment. Let's do a quick auto groups. So what I recommend with your fingers is not actually to spend a lot of time sculpting individual fingers. I really recommend sculpting one finger and then duplicating that finger so that you don't have to sit there and sculpt a bunch of them. You know, it's kind of a waste of time when they're all relatively the same and you can kind of create a nice base. Obviously your thumb will be different because thumb, not as many joints. Technically there are, but it's kind of hidden. Okay. Thicken those up. And we'll get that over there. All right. So I'll start working on a finger here in just a moment, but let me work on the hand a little more. And then for the wrist, sculpt a couple brush strokes up here real quick. For the wrist, I'll just kind of grab this section, pull down, just like that. That's fine. See how stretched it is? You can just click on Dynamesh and voila, we're all good. So now I'm just gonna go over top, fill in some of this information from the side view, get rid of any awkward thickness areas, fill in any areas that are too narrow and thin. See how thick it's getting here in the pad of the thumb? That just feels weird. Let's fix that up. And then you got some like bony landmarks here on the wrist that we're not gonna worry about too much. I'm gonna focus more on the hand and less on the arm. But we won't completely ignore it. And we'll get it a little more cylindrical here, giving it some of the form that we would expect to see. And let's clean up over here a little more. And if you're at this stage and you're starting to kind of work organically like I'm doing, and you're like, whoa, this is like super messy. What do I do with this? It's fine, just remesh it. Just go to Z Remesher or whatever, quad retopo, doesn't matter. Whatever you're using, just remesh it. Just get something cleaner and easier to work with. Oh yeah, for sure. Don't waste your time sculpting a million fingers, toes, whatever. Just do one and duplicate it. Oh, so I'm cycling through them. Oh, it's just really easy. You just use your arrow keys up and down. You can just kind of quickly do that. You can click them with your mouse. You can use your arrow keys. I'm probably using my arrow keys if that's what you're talking about. So I'm on one subtool and now I'm on the other, just pressing up and down on my arrow keys. I would recommend watching a ZBrush basics video if you're trying to use ModMesh in ZBrush and you're not super familiar with the ZBrush toolset. I have one on my Gumroad, or you can, of course, I have a bunch of free tutorials here on my YouTube, free stuff all over YouTube, if you want to go that route as well. But specifically on my Gumroad, there's a quick start guide that kind of goes through a lot of things like that to get you up and running as fast as possible. All right, let's work on that hand shape a little more. And then very soon I'm going to start getting into pose, because I don't want to spend a ton of time creating a neutral hand and then, making that look really refined and then pose that hand. Because what ends up happening is you just have to re-sculpt everything twice, because you're making such big changes. And we don't want to sculpt everything twice, do we? I mean, some people might. Not me. I don't. Work smarter, not harder. Especially when it comes to sculpting. Alright, get some basic forms going through up here. And I'm going to stylize a lot of these shapes as we continue forward, but I just want to get some structure down. Talking earlier about using realistic reference to create stylized forms. I think that's a really fun exercise. So heck, we're gonna do that here today. All right, so the fingers appear to be shorter from the front view as opposed to the back view because of the way that they connect here to your hand. And that angled wedge is what causes that effect. So it's kind of weird if you're referencing a hand and your fingers might look really long or really short. That's probably what's going on there. All right, and then let me grab one of the fingers. I'll just split it off as its own subtool. And then we can get in here and start working on this thing. So let me slice it up. We're going to create the first knuckle right about there, and then the next one right about there. So cascading down the finger, each one is about 1/3 less the length than the last. That's not super important, but it can be a good rule of thumb to kind of get you close to the general proportions of where your joints are on your finger, but it's not a huge deal. All right. So I'm going to do a little bit of Z modeler here, just a tiny bit. I know I said we'd work organically, but for the most part, I just want to get some bevels in here, make it a little easier to work on so that when I bend these fingers, they don't look completely absurd. All right, and then from there, let me get one more edge loop up top. We're going to start squaring out and flattening the tops of these fingers. And we're going to keep the bottom nice and round. So this is a little fundamental called contrast. And this is a really powerful way to create visual interest in the silhouette of your shapes. So this works really great for 3D, for 2D, for just about every D. And let's make sure I'm pinching this correctly. A little hard to see, all these poly groups. So see, we're back here working organically. But now with those edge loops in the proper place, they're gonna bend a little better, okay? And now let's go through here, let's flatten out the backside a little more. Clean up these nasty plane changes that I've created. And it's okay to keep them rough. And then for the bottom of the shape, we're keeping these rounded rhythms. So flat on top for the most part, and then rounded on the bottom. Really nice contrast of shape language. And I'm just gonna exaggerate these sharp edges. And I probably won't take time to do a fingernail. We'll see. We'll see if you guys are super interested in the fingernail. It's not too hard though. We'll look at that in a little bit. All right, and then another thing, I'm talking about, ways to make a shape not look super boring. One of those is going to be taper. We're going from one end to the other end of this finger. Let's not have it be super boring and the same width the whole way through. Let's make it go from something that's wide to something that's more narrow. That's much more visually interesting than just being parallel lines. So you can, reverse that rhythm if you want and have the fingertip be really fat and thick, which is a really cool effect. It kind of makes it look like an amphibian hand or a frog finger or something like that. It's really a common shape language that you would see there. So that's a really fun motif to go for if that's something you're interested in. We'll play with it. I might go that direction later on, but I think for now we'll keep it a little more what we might expect. And then for the knuckles for this hand, I don't know. I'll play around with it. We're going for something a little more stylized, so we'll see. I kind of like getting these sharp edge shapes here, so maybe I'll just really exaggerate that. Maybe some sharp points, something like that. I'll play with it. A lot about creating form from imagination. Obviously we're referencing a real hand, but it's not about having this perfect picture in your head of what the final result is going to look like. It's more about starting to create something, having a general idea, and then using the tools that you've built and the tools that you have in your kit to go in and make changes as you go. So very rarely do I know of any artist that has this perfect vision in their head and they're like, that is exactly how I saw it in my head, and that's what it looks like now on the page or on the screen or whatever. It's more like, well, I knew what I wanted, but then, I needed to, once I got it on the page, I was able to adjust it and improve upon my original idea. And sometimes you just go in with no idea at all. And you're like, now I'm gonna start pushing on this idea and, you know, make a line or two and see where it takes me. Ah, okay. You can just cycle through tools with the Tartarus. I'm not familiar with that. Arrow keys work great for me, though. Not that I use that very often. All right, so we'll come back to the hand in just, the finger in just a moment, but I want to work on the hand a little more and start thickening up this in a few particular areas. So it's a little like thin here and thicker in some areas, so let's go through that and adjust some of the shapes that we're creating. Start stylizing some of these shapes as well. So I'm gonna mark out with my pinch brush, my custom brush that I like to use, my Folly mech, to mark out some planes. This is one of the brushes that I'm probably most known for and seen using. It's a really powerful brush that is like a pinch brush and some kind of carving in brush. It's really nice for just going through and creating your primary forms. But the brush isn't going to do it all for you, so please don't buy it expecting that to happen. Still requires a lot of practice and finesse. Too often, you know, I feel like, you know, in some ways, I'm like, yeah, please buy my brushes, but at the same time, I'm like, well, you can do it all with the default brushes, guys. You don't need my brushes to sculpt like I do. They'll probably help you sculpt like I do. They should, because they're the brushes that I use. But you can do it all with the default stuff. I'm a big fan of default tools. But I'm also a big fan of customizing UIs. The ZBrush UI, as we all know, is not the most helpful UI in the world. So I'm all for customizing stuff to make it easier and better for you specifically. And if another artist has something that you like, use that as a good start. And then take it from there. And keep working on it. I'm gonna look at my own hand a little more here. Kind of hard to look at my own hand and sculpt with my microphone here in the way. Yo, what's up with this guy's hand that I was referencing? He had a chonky hand. Or maybe I have unchonky hands. Maybe I need more chonk. I go rock climbing a lot, so if anything, my fingers are shredded like all the time. Alright. Let's mess up this surface a little more, get a little more volume. Blend through here. This is a little off down here. There we go. And don't be afraid, you know, if you're doing a stylistic study of something that's more realistic and you're trying to, you know, add some style to it, don't be afraid to experiment. Play around, see what you can come up with. I'm going to now Dynamesh this and then chop off a good chunk of this. Whoops. That is not the brush that I wanted. But it'll get the job done. It'll still do it. It'll just be a little slower. Alright. Just trying to use a selection lasso, but that's okay. Alright. So I don't like the shape of my finger, so I want to stylize it a little more and play around with the shape. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to play around, see if anything cool kind of like piques my interest. I like the kind of round contrast with the sharper shapes, but instead of like more sharp, maybe we could go for more boxy, more square. I think that's a good idea. So let's try that. Let's head in that direction now. And because this is getting so stretched from my pinch brush, I will remesh this in just a moment. Yo, what's going on, Mr. Cricket? Welcome back. How are you doing? Who is Miguel O'Hara? Am I gonna regret looking up Miguel O'Hara? Okay, we're getting boxier. Boxier by the minute. We're getting more stretched by the minute, too. Let me dynamesh that. That looks so stretched. Spoderman. Spoderman 2099. He do be ripped. He do be shredded. He'd be a fun character to sculpt. Honestly, him, is it Hobie? I think it's Hobie. Spider-Punk. He'd be cool to sculpt. He had a lot of cool shapes. We did a blockout of Miles Morales in the last one of his face, kind of using that as a nice reference or starting point. You know what? What Follygon? I'm just gonna simplify the bottom of this finger, I think. Yeah, it's talking about like really chunky shapes. What if we super chunkify it, huh? Badonk. We're getting thick. Triple C thick in these fingers. Alright, let's get some more taper too. Alright, I like that basic shape. Now I'm gonna start duplicating that finger and working towards our thwip pose, Spider-Man kind of thing. Alright. So for that, I'm gonna turn on this little transparency button and start to duplicate this finger and swap its position. Duplicate that again, and we're just gonna fill in the gaps here. And this will save us a lot of time as we move forward. So we don't have to like sit here and sculpt the same thing over and over again. So I'm just scaling those down and then I'm squashing them. And that gives me a really nice base to work from. I'm not gonna like do a super detailed hand, so I'm not gonna get, you know, one finger in this perfect shape, especially here when we're working live. You know, a hand can take as long as a face. No joke. So I'm not gonna spend where'd we go? Spend a ton of time getting that absolutely perfect. Okay, and then the thumb obviously is gonna have a backwards curvature, but when you're doing the Spider-Man pose, your thumb is like more bent the other way, so do something like that. And then let's delete those extra fingers we don't need. Fingers are a little long, but that's okay. We'll fix that in just a moment. let's start working on position for the pose of the fingers in the hand. So for that, I'm gonna go into Transpose Master. We did a video, or I have a video coming out on Transpose Master very soon and how you can use this tool to your advantage. I use it for a lot of different things. If you caught last week's live stream, then you already saw a little idea of what we'll be talking about. That'll be coming out very soon. Let's see, I need that to be a little longer, actually. And then I need the actual hand, this section that we got coming out there, to be a little more squashed in. And because I don't want to keep pulling my hand up, again, I'm going to find another reference to use real quick. And put that a little closer. We'll adjust that in just a moment. All right, give me a second while I find a nice reference. Hobie? Is it Hobie? Is that how you say it? He is a homie. Homie Hobie. All right. We getting in. Spoderman time. Let me, where are we? There we go. I need to send this back because the palm of the hand is way too high of a resolution for me to manipulate. So I need to come in here, grab this, and then make sure dynamesh that once, just to get rid of any stretching, and then I'm going to Z-remesh that back down, just to something easier to manipulate and work with. But so far, the process that you've seen is really similar to how I would go about blocking out a character's head. We're just creating really simple shapes, simple plane changes, then we're going to take those forms and we're going to refine them and slowly build up more information. And let me merge. Merge all my fingies. And I just want to mirror this real quick. Give us some new perspective. And T-pose. All right, cool. All right, so I found a quick secondary reference, so I don't have to keep holding up my own hand here. We'll start posing this. For these two fingers, these two middle fingers, they're gonna be grouped together, going up like so. And this is where hands get really confusing. Remember, because your joint for your finger is back here. So when you bend your fingers, they look a lot shorter from the front than when compared to the back side of your hand. So that's really important to kind of pay attention to when you're starting to pose your hands, because things can get really confusing really fast when you're like, why is my finger looking so short from here and so long from this side? And it's like, well, that's because of the way that they bend. The joint is back here, more towards the, you know, you got like these pads. The pad of your hand is where your joint is on the other side. So it's kind of tucked up underneath this piece right here. So that's where they bend from. So keep that in mind. You know what? I'll just do an auto groups. That'll be easier. All right, so let's position our thumb now roughly where it needs to be. And I kind of like the slight backwards bend that we can get on the thumb, so I'm actually gonna do that. I think that's more of a classic look. A little hitchhiker thumb, right? Something roughly like that. And I'll probably go through and simplify a lot of angles as well. This is also something I really like to do when stylizing shapes. Find these angles where things kind of blend and work together and see how you can like simplify them in the silhouette. Like this line right here, we got a nice clean edge right there, and that would look super cool if that was kind of cleaned up a little more. Go a little shorter there. And something that I think is really cool with stylization is where we exaggerate gesture. So here with the fingers, I'm really going to exaggerate this kind of pose. Like essentially what I'm doing is like the fingers going out and traveling that direction. And because of that, I'm going to exaggerate that direction and push it further than it would normally go. And try to even give it some kind of curve, as you can see there, in that direction, to like indicate that that is where it's traveling. I think that's such a cool effect, and I think that can be a really powerful tool in your kit when stylizing. You gotta be a little careful though, because things can get noodly really, really quick and easily. So, a little bit's okay, but find that breaking point is what I like to do, and then nudge it back from there. All right. I think that's a good start. So now what I'll do is, because these two fingers in the middle are going to be basically the same, I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to do all the changes to one and then duplicate it, I should say. So let me head back. I need to get some more water here soon. Yeah, I do have tips for, sculpting faster. And my one and only tip for that is truthfully sculpt a lot. Speed is like not a skill when it comes to sculpting. Speed is a result of sculpting a lot. You will get faster naturally with time. And I would say, don't be worried about speed. It is not a race. You will get faster in time. Don't try, you can try to work fast, and I do think that, doing things like speed sculpts can improve your speed, but I don't think that speed sculpts are, and only doing speed sculpts is going to be the best thing for your artistic growth. Speed's gonna come with time, so just understand that that's the case. But you can't specifically work on speed. I think there's better uses of time. All right, fingers. What are we doing with the fingers? We're working on, let's grab this one. I'll use this one as my base. And so here's something really interesting about fingers. Because I'm going to be bending this 90 degrees, it's going to take a really sharp bend like that. So it's probably best that I actually just chop this up and then kind of work on it that way. I'll show you what I mean here in just a moment, because it can be really frustrating trying to keep this as a singular mesh. I'll show you here in just a second. See how stretched it's getting? It's already kind of doing it, but it'll get worse as I keep going. So I recommend kind of chopping these up occasionally. And then when you bend this here, this distance is actually quite a lot shorter. You can look at your own finger. See that really tiny gap right there? Whoop. This is another reason why we probably want to chop this up, but keep it together for now. I'll kind of fight it for a little bit. It'll be fine. Francis says he's been sculpting for about 7 years now and still feel like I could be quicker and more efficient. Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Yeah. Always room to get faster. Especially, I feel like I'm... Here's something, you know. If you're watching me sculpt and you're like, whoa, he's fast. I am probably about 3 to 5 times faster sculpting when I am not talking at the same time. Because I'm pausing to say things. I'm trying to talk while sculpting, and that kind of kills my brain, actually. So, see, I'm doing it right now. Sculpting and talking makes me a lot slower. So I'm much faster when I'm not talking. So occasionally you'll see me like actually shut up and try to sculpt. That looks pretty cool. I'm liking that direction. I think this was a good choice with this pose. And I got some of that exaggerated curvature in there. You can see that starting to happen. I can do that back here too. Just a little. You don't want to make it look broken. No brokey. No brokey fingy. I've broken almost all my fingers, by the way. Interesting tidbit about me. When I played soccer, for a long time I was I wasn't, but for a long time I was a goalie. And when I was a goalie, I would stop the ball with my hands, and the ball would break my fingers quite often. Maybe I was doing it wrong, I don't know. But I remember when I got, at one point I've broken my wrist, I've broken the same wrist twice. And when I went to go get an x-ray on that wrist to see whether or not it was actually broken, it was. And they came back and they were like, yo, you got, like, we can see all the places where your fingers were broken and they did, like, heal back. Like, what are you doing to your fingers? I'm like, oh no. These people are gonna think I'm, like, abused or something. Which I wasn't. Abused by a soccer ball, maybe. A spider sona? What is a spider sona? I don't have a spider sona because I don't know what a spider sona is. Is this like a Spider-Verse version of yourself? Is that like the idea? Because if so, that's super cool. That'd be a fun, like, that's like is that the new thing going around town? The hotness? I feel like I don't really keep up with the trends. I'm not a very trendy person. Especially when the trends involve hate, which seems to be the case a lot of time in the art community. Not a lot of the time, but some of the time. Hey, we got a finger. All right. Let's give you a little remesh. Oh my god, that is really hard to see. I'll give that a second to calculate. Thank you. Nice shapes. Nice shapes, he says. Appreciate it. Alright, we're gonna delete this finger. Looks like we're flipping somebody the bird. The ring finger bird. Nice. Alright, let's delete that finger. Duplicate this one. slide it on over. And these two fingers are gonna work like a single unit. A really nice bit of posing advice for hands is to use finger grouping. So a lot of the time when people draw hands, once you see this, you can't unsee it, but you'll see these three fingers grouped together. You got the thumb obviously doing its own thing, and then you have the pinky like a little bit separated. You'll see that as a really common thing. Another one is the two middle fingers, your middle and ring finger, will often be grouped together in a hand pose like this. This creates a really nice, just like organic feel for your hand. So it's not like all spidered out. It feels really nice. And once you see it, you will not unsee it in a lot of people's art. That's exactly what I'm gonna do here. All right, let me do something real quick. Little grouping exercise. All right, we're making progress. If you didn't hear me say it earlier, hands take a while. Hands can take a long time to sculpt, but I'm trying to go quick here. And, you know, when you're working on your hands, I was talking about shape language earlier, and we duplicated the same finger as a starting point. But now that we kind of have these fingers in these different poses, we can actually change the shapes of them and, you know, make them more unique. Like, one thing that I think is really cool that you can do here with your fingers, it is a cool simplification of form, is take a shape like this that's essentially a cylinder and just really simplify that backside. And you'll see, like, here, if we just look at this one, you can kind of still see, like, the rhythm through it as it hits the knuckle. But for the most part, it's just like a simple tube, right? And it creates a really cool shape. And I'll simplify that side and make that even more simple as well. So here, I'll now look at these two fingers. What just happened? There we go. As one group or one unit as well. And I have a really great recommendation for clean form that I'm going to get into later, but just kind of simplifying, lowering your poly count is a really great way to do that, which I just did here. Just lower that. We're just capturing that basic shape, that main primary form. And I'm just smoothing out some shapes. Really exaggerating that. I say push things, you know? Find out what works. If it's been a while since you've tried something, try it again. Maybe you just like didn't have the skill set to do exactly what you wanted last time, and now you can try again. I am always learning new things, not by watching a bunch of tutorials and stuff like that, but by just sculpting and experimenting. I don't really watch like tutorials when it comes to sculpting. I don't remember the last time I watched any kind of sculpting tutorial. When I was learning how to sculpt, what I actually did was I would watch traditional sculptors. Not really even tutorials. I would just kind of watch them sculpt, like really early on. And that's how like I informed a lot of my ideas and techniques. Like the way I used to make eyelids, I do this a little bit now, but the way I used to make eyelids was like a direct way that I saw someone sculpt eyelids traditionally. And I was like, oh, well, I can do that digitally. I can do that in 3D. So that's kind of where I pulled a lot of different ideas and techniques. Man, that's really cool. That's such a... Look how strong this motion is pushing forward. Like, it really feels like they're throwing their hand forward. I love that. And I feel like I can push that more. So like here, I'm gonna show you what I'm kind of seeing here mentally. So I'm looking at this finger and how it kind of flows through the hand. So I'm like following this whole curve and trying to get those two shapes to kind of talk to each other. While still kind of working on the same level here. Over to the other side. I just think that kind of stuff is super cool. This is kind of what I'm thinking about inside my head when I'm stylizing stuff. Even when you're like working from a 2D reference or something like that, there's a lot of stuff that's up for interpretation. I mentioned earlier that I have a cool collab coming up. And you know, there's some stuff that like, it's like a puzzle. There's always stuff to figure out. Even when you think that there isn't, like you think it's all spelled out for you. It's never. Who am I kidding? I never feel that way. It's more just like ignorance when I'm starting a character and I'm like, it'll probably be fine. And then I get in and I'm like, oh, this is awful. I have to solve all these problems. None of this works in 3D. I almost got like a question mark shape going on here. That's probably a little too strong. I think I'll smooth that out and remove that exaggeration. All right, but I really like that direction. I'm liking that a lot. All right, let's work on that thumb a little more. Look at this curve. We're gonna try to flow that up. Make that feel like it's kind of working together with the other shapes. I'll let that quick save actually go through. It's been a while since I've saved. And I'll give that a second to think. Remesh on our finger. Ring finger looks longer against the palm. Let's see. Ooh, you might be right. A little longer than the middle. Just bending through there. I like it. Nice job. Nice catch. So let's do a little just looking at, you know what I want to do, let's do this first. T-pose. Let's grab this. Let's grab, grab you. And all of that. Blur, pull down. And you just try scaling this uniformly here. Like I'll just use my move brush. Let's see. Something a little more along those lines. And then another thing I want to do here, at least while I'm in T-pose, is pull that pinky a little closer. Kind of clean things up a little here. Pull them a little tighter. See if we can scale in over here. Just a little bit of squash. And I'll probably adjust that a little more later, but that's feeling better already. And offsetting that, I think, in general is a good idea, just so we're not completely uniform. We can still have a group, and we'll adjust those more later. But let's get back to our thumb for a little while. That's why I have you guys here, for when my eyes get too used to looking at things. Ooh, you know, I wanted to exaggerate that curve, but it feels a little awkward. Let me see if I can maybe add some volume on the other side to compensate. You know, I like finding these areas where I can integrate some of these curves and like blend these shapes together in a really like flowy, beautiful way. But sometimes you end up with some awkward stuff. Let me play with that a little more. All right, I don't hate it. In fact, I might like it. And eventually, I'll merge a lot of this stuff and blend it together. Now, if you were creating a hand for, you know, not just a sculptural piece like I'm doing here, you definitely wouldn't want to start posing your hand. So then it's going to be stuck in that pose forever. And that's not very useful. So you just want a neutral pose. But here it's okay. And I like to keep a little extra ridge here, just so that when I go to blend those in, when I combine these pieces of geometry, it's a little easier to kind of create that actual knuckle bump that you get. And then you can carve in a little more, which I'll do a little bit right now, just give them a little extra depth. It's a little easier with a mask though. The carve-in brush that I'm using can be a little finicky around those tight areas. So exaggerate and knock back later. Much easier to do than the opposite. Knock it all back, and then you just have to resculpt stuff, and that's not fun. I don't want that. All right. Hopefully I didn't exaggerate that too much on the fingers here. We got like a little simplified, a little crazy. But I don't know. I kind of like it. It's kind of fun. And additionally, you can always change the angle, get a different perspective, flip things over, keep playing with them. Oh, and I also wanted to soften a lot of this. Some of these forms are just a little too hard. let me pull these back in a little more. Do the same thing up top. And what I'm going to do here is pull these apart temporarily so that I can merge them with my hand. A little squiggly, a little scraggly. We will, I'll play with like making these a little more unique as well, because right now they're pretty similar since I duplicated them. Okay, so let me just rotate that out, make sure that they're not touching what we're looking for there. And let me merge all the other fingers together as well. And for this part of the process, we don't want any of the fingers touching. We want gaps. And we'll put them back together later after we remesh. But for now, that's what we want. So it looks a little awkward, right? But we'll fix that once we merge everything together. And then the other thing that I need to do is make sure that the palm, or the pad of the finger is not touching the palm, because it'll fuse together there. So I don't want that. All right, let me check on that. We'll do a quick Dynamesh. And let's see. Palm, okay. Looks good. Awesome. Okay, everything's merged together now. So now I can start kind of cleaning up mainly transitions and continuing forward here. And this is, you know, not the most interesting part of the process, but it still needs to happen. Let's do a little cleanup here and there, mainly using a trim brush. Fill in a lot of gaps, smooth, trim, etc. And I'll be able to do more of this after I remesh as well. And we can hide a couple pieces. Create a very simple transitionary fold here. Just holding Alt with my trim brush and pulling through there. Okay. Up here, just blend most of that out. Smooth. Same thing here. Okay. Now you can use polygroups to your advantage. I strongly recommend it, but I'm not going to waste time with polygrouping stuff here today. Instead, I'm just going to remesh and project my form. And because my undo history, it's being, oh, there we go. I can control click. Never mind, we're good. We are all good. All right, let's Z-remesh this and then project the form back. Hello, Q, welcome. Or Q. Give that a second to remesh. It'll take a minute. All right, make sure we don't have any holes or anything weird. Looks fine to me. Some of the polys are stretched, a little awkward, but it'll be fine. Do a quick project, make sure nothing weird's happening. Should be good. Subdivide and project again, double check. I'll subdivide again, but I'm not gonna project this time. So just 2 projections, in this case is plenty. And now we can just blend and clean things up. So, you know, I was talking about taper earlier with my shapes. That also happens here with my edges. Notice how I'm taking hard and sharp edges, and as I pull them down and through an object, they kind of soften. So that's a fundamental that you'll see a lot with things like edge quality. So if you are someone that sketches or draws, think of like line weight, right? When you draw a line, you don't want a line that goes point A to point B all the same. You want something that starts gentle and becomes sharper and then kind of gently fades out. Same idea here with sculptural form when we're talking about different edges. Something that's sharp, that starts sharp and then kind of becomes more gentle as it goes, giving a line or an edge a really nice quality. Okay, just doing a quick selection and polygroup there. Control-Shift-S on your keyboard to grow and shrink a selection. Mainly just want some polygroups for these two so that I can put them back together. Regroup these fingers, have them act as a single unit. I like to, I'm kind of thinking about these as one big shape together. Alright, we'll keep working on blending just a little longer here, but for the most part, we're in a pretty good spot, and from here, it would be just a lot of refinement. Continuing to push forward on this hand, making more changes, starting to sculpt our bony landmarks up here, which I'm not really going to do a lot with. I'm just going to give some simple nubbins. Very technical term, nubbins is. Something only professionals use in the industry. Alright. And a little more cleanup up here. Get rid of those beveled, sharper edges. But I'm pretty happy with that in terms of a simple and quick stylized hand. Looking at my own hand and another that was just basic. So that's pretty helpful. Having additional reference so you don't have to constantly look at your own hand as you go. And just a few adjustments here. I'll keep fiddling with this while we maybe answer some more questions before we proceed to the next thing. Hey, you know what? Actually, here. I'll just mirror it to the other side. Let me get my subdivs back. You can't mirror when you have subdivs. And I'll do that just so I can kind of refresh my own eyes. Kind of like flipping your canvas when you're working on a 2D thing. Similar idea here. Yeah, I do actually think I got like a little too simplified on these two fingers. That's okay. I think it's still cool. Can always add more information. I'm a big fan. You inspired me to continue learning 3D sculpting. Hey, well, welcome. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear. I'm glad that you're still pursuing sculpting. Sculpting's a lot of fun. I enjoy it a lot. And like most things in life, just give it some time and you'll get better at it. That's the cool thing about art, right? There's no well, most things actually. Cool thing about most things. You just do it a lot and you get good at it. And then the more you do it, the more fun it becomes and the more rewarding it gets. And it's a lot of fun. Right. Awesome. Well, there's our completed hand. Like I said, to do a little more on this, I'd probably need to take a quick break, give it a few minutes off screen, and then come back to it. Especially for the proportions, there's definitely a couple, things that just feel a little awkward in terms of flow right around here that I'd like to tweak. But I'll leave that for now, or maybe for another stream or video in the future. Awesome. How do you determine your commission prices? Well, that's the fun part. I don't do commissions, but I assume for the people that do, they base it off of their cost of living and how much time they believe that or how much money they believe that their time is worth for a project. Like, you look at all your expenses and you factor in your housing, your electric, your utilities, your whatever, and then maybe however much money you want to make. You factor all that in, and then you divide it by, how much time it would take for you to make that much money. Like if you said, I need to make $50,000 a year or something like that. You're like, okay, well, if I worked this many hours a week, how much money would I need to make, an hour to do that? Which I think is like $25 is like the quick math on that. Is that correct? I think it's always half of the K numbered per hour. I don't remember. Doesn't matter, but that's like the general process for how you go about doing something like that. Oh, absolutely. I think AI is gonna change the industry in a huge way. It's gonna change a lot of people's workflow. But I don't know if it'll specifically change my workflow, just because I really like sculpting things from scratch, and I really like drawing things from scratch. I think AI will have some productivity tools that I would like to use, though. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely going to revolutionize a lot of industries. In some ways, it already has. Who knows what the future holds? All right, I saw a question earlier that I couldn't answer because I was in the middle of sculpting, and I couldn't answer that question and think at the same time. But they were asking for some motivation advice, or some motivation advice for like a new artist. So if you're like really new to sculpting or drawing, like how do you stay motivated? And when I used to stream all the time, like maybe 5 years ago, and I would get that question a lot. And I used to always say the same thing. I used to always say I'm really bad at answering questions about motivation. And I used to think that was because I was really internally motivated, and I was, and I still am really internally motivated. But I feel like I've been able to think about that question a lot more over the past 5 years, and I don't think my answer is exactly the same as it used to be. So I think the first thing you need in terms of like advice that I can give is you gotta enjoy the thing that you're doing. Like, I really enjoy sculpting. Somebody just asked, like, would AI change your process? And it might change my process in some ways, but I really like sculpting things from scratch. That's kind of like one of my main motivational factors. I enjoy sculpting. I like sculpting, and it makes me want to sculpt more. If your motivation is like the finished result, the finished artwork, you might have a rough time, because you can just type words into a piece of software now and pop out a pretty great image, rather quickly. So if that's your motivation, you might not be sticking around in the drawing and sculpting world all that long if that's like your motivating factor. You might, I don't know. But that's my motivation, at least. That's kind of like, I enjoy it. So you gotta have, I think personally you gotta enjoy the process a lot. I think that's really helpful, and you gotta have your own why. And like I said, mine is the process and journey, and less about the finished result. That's why whenever, I don't know why I get asked this question all the time, but I get asked, what's your favorite artwork that you've ever worked on? I don't know why people ask that, but my answer is always the same. It's never changed. And it's the piece that I'm working on right now. Because it's not about the finished piece or the finished result. I like finishing artwork, and I can throw it up online and be like, hey, there you go. Pretty cool, right? All right. Glad you liked it. On to the next one. Let's go. Time to work on something else. Because that's what's fun about it for me. You know, it's cool like seeing people share your work and enjoy it. But for me at least, it's about doing the dang thing. Love creating things. Yeah, when your hobby is your job, well, for some people that can be tough. I'll be honest. For some people that can be like a little weird. But I think it's great. But then you just end up developing new hobbies. Like I started rock climbing not too long ago, and that's a really fun hobby for me. I love rock climbing. Oh, it's so much fun. It's so gamified too. It's really cool. Oh, I'm kind of noodling here. All right. But anyway, hopefully that was a good answer. I feel like I said, my mentality around, I feel like I've been able to like parse out more and think about more like about motivation for myself just over the past like 5 years or so. Whereas before it was just like, I don't know, I'm just a motivated person. I've been able to think about it a little more. I've grown. All right. So I want to end here with one more demo. Where's our... Is this the right file? Is this the right skull? Oh, I guess I did combine these earlier. I didn't remember combining these. So we did a skull earlier, a really simple skull, and it's also been a long enough time that I can look at this and maybe make some quick changes to it. But that's okay. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to do a quick demo on how you can create hyper clean shapes, because that is something that I'm really well known for, and I think people are making it way too hard on themselves. I'll show you a really quick and easy way to go about this process. That's a great point. You know, art is a really hard industry to break into in terms of working, and if you do treat it like a long-term thing and go in, if you're starting now, going with that mindset that it's not going to take weeks, it's not going to take months, it's going to take years. It is going to take years, and for some people it takes a lot of years, but if you go in with that mentality that it's going to take a long time, then you're not going to be disappointed when you get 1 or 2 years in and you're still not where you need to be to work at a professional industry standard. Okay, so now it's time. It is time for me to show you how I create hyper clean shapes. The ultimate secret. How does Follygon do it? How does he make all these stylized characters? Whoa, look at that guy. He's so clean. Look at that girl. She's so clean. Look at this other girl. She's clean. She's stylized. Look at this cool head. That's so clean. So clean. So clean. Clean, clean, clean. I get so many comments about how my work is so clean, and I don't really know what that means. But I'm going to show you how I create the shapes that I do and how I get some clean shapes. God, the word clean doesn't even mean anything anymore. It means nothing. It's nothing. It's just a nonsense word. Clean. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so let me show you. Let's start with a sphere. I might do like a demo on something else, but let's start with a sphere because we all love this sphere. He's our best friend. I'm gonna click on Make Polymesh 3D, and we're gonna get into some sculpting. So let me just start with a simple head. simple head shape, right? So you start squashing your sphere. Maybe you're someone like me who likes to use multiple subtools, and you start creating your different shapes. You're like, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm sculpting, just like Follygon. Finally, I've mastered the craft. And you're working, and you're doing stuff. You're like, okay, I see Follygon uses the pinch brush a lot. That's a cool brush. I think I can use that. You start pinching up, making some different shapes. And now I'm doing a bad job because I'm so good at creating clean shapes. So I'll get in here and we'll sculpt more. And you're like, all right, there's that. And then I know like there's, some eye sockets here. Oh, that's getting stretched. Dynamesh. Polygon uses Dynamesh. I'm going to use Dynamesh. All right, so there's the eye socket. And then there's like a nose, right? Like you got to get the nose on there. You're like, all right. And then there's the barrel of the mouth. I hear him talk about the barrel. The barrel all the time. It's all about the barrel, guys. So then you're working on your sculpting. And you like get it here and you're like, whoa, why is my surface so like messy everywhere? Like, what's going on? Things are just like kind of messy and not looking super great. You're like, I know what it is. Subdivision. I need another subdivision level. So I add more subdivision levels. And oh no, what's happening? What's wrong? Things are getting messy. Things are getting crazy. Your surface is a mess. It's not looking good. So you're like, I know. Smooth brush. Hold shift. Smooth the crap out of it, right? You're smoothing things. And you're like, oh no, it still looks really bad. What is happening? How do I fix this? Where did I go wrong? It's okay. You didn't go wrong anywhere. You didn't mess up. This is all part of the process. Sculpting is messy, and you create dirty stuff in the beginning. It's the alien phase that I love to talk about, when things are awkward and not looking great. And you can try as you might with the smooth brush to clean things up, but no matter what, like depending on your resolution, it's probably still going to be really messy. So let me show you how you can clean up your geometry. And it is one button, one single button. You scroll down in the tool menu, you find geometry, you open up Z Remesher. You've heard of it before probably if you use Z Remesher. You take that slider and you crank it all the way down. You crank it as low as it goes, 0.1. That's pretty low. That's as low as it goes. So what you do is you click on that Z Remesher button, you let it calculate, you let it think for a bit, which I'm going to do right now. Sometimes it has to think for a really long time because you're recording. Sometimes it freezes. We'll change that number to 1. A little trick, you can remesh at a high... Actually, the problem is my resolution here is a little wonky here. I'll lower this. I'll lower my Dynamesh. Boom. Whoa, it's even messier, right? It's messier, you say. That's okay. It'll be easier for the remesh. So we're going to remesh down to 0.1. And you're like, what are you doing, Follygon? What are you trying to teach me here, man? What is this crap? This is nothing. This is not helpful. This is helpful, I promise. I promise. Watch. Subdivide it. Subdivide it again. You can actually click on the button if you want, or just press Control D on your keyboard. And look at that. You got a smooth, clean surface, but you lost all the form, all the details that you did. That's okay. You can get them back. You can project them. Projecting is your friend. Let me show you how to do that. You undo, Control Z, hotkeys. You get back to where you want, that point that you had before where you had the eye sockets, you had the nose, the barrel of the mouth. You go up to your undo history, you Control click. See that little white marker? You're all good. That's what you need. Oh, I did it at the wrong spot. That's okay, I meant to do it here. Beautiful. You go back. You click on the project submenu. So we're still in the tool menu. We're under tool, we're under subtool, and we're under project. And then you click on project history. Now, depending on the resolution that you started with, there's probably a big discrepancy in the volume that you had here. So I wanted to show you this error before I show you a better way to go about this process. So from here to here, there's a big volume difference and the projection distance isn't big enough. So you can undo and you can adjust the projection distance to attempt to make that cleaner. Just a little change there. I just made that, I think that was on 0.2 to begin with. I increased that, 0.2 I think is what it was on by default. 0.6, a little bigger, and now we're doing a little better. So now we got some of that back, but it's still messy. But because we have those subdivision levels now we can smooth and clean this, and the geometry is going to work a lot better for us. So now I'm going back over top with my smooth brush. I haven't changed anything other than giving us some topology that works a little more with the form that we created earlier. So now I'm just smoothing. I'm literally doing the exact same thing. If you want to get fancy, you can use a trim brush. I have my own custom trim brush, and you can just gently trim stuff out where it's a little too hard, and then smooth it again. If you want to get even more fancy, you go down to your subdiv levels. You step down one level, you smooth. You can be gentle with it. I like to smooth very gently because the smooth brush is really destructive, especially if you're on a low subdiv, you're gonna destroy everything. So higher subdiv, a little more, a little less destructive. And then we just gently, guys, that's a key word, gently smooth. And voila, we got some clean surface information. One last really helpful tip that I'll give you here when using the smooth brush that is invaluable is when you smooth and hold the shift key. See how my cursor turns blue when I hold shift? You'll see that too on your end if you're using a smooth brush. You can hold down shift and smooth, and then let go of the shift key, and you'll keep smoothing. This is an alternative smoothing algorithm that tends to keep volume. So here, watch this. If I smooth on this, you're gonna see it's gonna suck in a lot of that volume, right? It's gonna destroy a lot of it. But if I start smoothing and then let go of the shift key, it's gonna do its best to maintain that volume. Look at that. Pretty cool, right? So we just went from that to that. That's a really clean surface if you're just creating the major front plane of the face and the back part of the skull. That's a really great starting point. But for me, we spend so long on these all these details. Gotta keep these details. So that's how I go about creating hyper clean shapes here in ZBrush. And then it's just about repeating that process. There are other brushes you can get into it with. You can grab my custom brushes if you want. If you want to use things like my Folly mech brush, I like to use that a lot instead of pinch brushes. This tends to be a lot more within my style. If you guys like that style, check out the link down below in the description. Gumroad.com/Follygon. Grab yourself some custom brushes. But of course, you can do all that with the default as well, but they're there if you need them, or if you want them. And that is how I make some hyper clean shapes. Beautiful. Beautiful shapes. Oh. And that's how I did this. That's how I made this quick skull. That's how I don't know where the hand went. Is that the right hand? That's how I did this hand. Spoderman hand. Some nice clean shapes. Easy. It's easy, guys. It's easy. It's just one button. Come on. Come on. If you're not using projection, you gotta use projection, guys. Projection is the secret to success. No, I don't use a 3D mouse. I use a normal mouse. I'm using a pen on my tablet. I just draw directly on my screen. Take the pen, put it down, boop. Just a little brush stroke. Not a 3D mouse. No, I don't have one. Mr. Clean? I need to shave my head. Your earlier comment said so clean. I told you, everybody says it. I really enjoy listening to your stuff while I sculpt, but I use Blender. Is ZBrush just much better at processing millions of polygons? I have issues when reaching over 1 million polys. Yes, it is better at handling more polygons. This is true. Buenos noches. Welcome. Glad to have you. Welcome. Awesome. Well, that was a really nice quick demo of a skull, some talks about anatomy, a little hand demo, a little demo on creating some hyper clean shapes, some talks on motivation. We talked about a lot of different stuff today, but that is time for me where I need to head out. The time has flown by. I was actually only going to stream for a couple hours today, but it's already nearly 3 hours. What happened? The time flew by. Before I go, though, if anybody has any last-minute questions before I head out, I would love to try to maybe answer some of those. And real quick, if you haven't checked it out yet, there's a link down below to my Gumroad. This is where you can check out a lot of my different stuff that I sell online, like my custom brushes, if you want to grab those. I mentioned those just a moment ago. My new guidebook, which just came out, How to Easily Draw Every Day. I created this book with my wife, Abby. We have gotten really into habit building lately, and this book is all about building a drawing habit, but it's useful for 3D sculpting, exercise, literally anything. It has a ton of different tips, talks about all sorts of different things in terms of motivation, but it also talks about, like, you know, when things get hard, like, what are you supposed to do? So check it out. You can go to my Gumroad and learn more about it on that page. If you're interested in learning absolutely everything I know about digital sculpting, and there's quite a bit, you can check out my online program, the Appeal Academy. This is pretty much all my knowledge wrapped up into one big package, appeal.academy. It's also how you get access to my Discord and mentorship program in the future, which seats are not open at this time. But if you're interested in that in the future, that would be the first step to get in line. Other than that, let's check out and see if we have any questions here before I bounce. Are you streaming? I am streaming, but I'm about to bounce. Glad you're here, though, for the very first time. Welcome. Glad to have you. Can't have clean shapes when you work with Dynamesh. You absolutely can have clean shapes when you work with Dynamesh. You just have to be a good sculptor. And that's a lot harder than the process that I just showed you, where you can just kind of Z-remesh stuff and smooth it and clean it out. That's a nice, easy way if you don't have a ton of background in sculpting, but I probably can't roll back on a lot of my... How many undos do I have here? 1,000? Does this go all the way back? Ooh, we might lag a little. So I started this skull from a sphere in Dynamesh. And, come back. Somebody said, somewhere, where were we? Let's go before we went Dynamesh. There we go. So this is all Dynamesh before I ever Z-remeshed. Somebody was like, well, why are your shapes so clean? I'm like, I don't know. Why so clean? Why so clean, Follygon? Practice. Sculpt. Get good at sculpting. Sculpt a lot. You'll make cleaner shapes. Or maybe you won't. I don't know. Sculpting's hard. But you probably will get better if you sculpt a lot. Probably. No guarantee. Had an amazing time. Appreciate it very much. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you so much. You do the same. Oh, do I have a streaming day? I don't. No. I streamed last Monday for the first time in a long time. I'm streaming again this Monday, so there's a fairly likely chance that I will stream next Monday. No promises, but I'm hoping to. So hopefully next Monday. I don't have a schedule right now because I'm kind of working my way back into streaming every once in a while. So, all right, I don't see any other questiones here. So I think that is going to be. I really need to set up a hotkey for this filter thing. There we go. But I think that's going to be all for us. You guys, like someone just said in the comments, have a wonderful rest of your day. And I hope to see you in my next stream or my next video. Whatever it is, stick around. Click that subscribe button and